Hello, friend. The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Good morning.
Wow, that's a pretty awesome helmet you have there. Is that Master Chief? What is that?
It is just it's a bicycle helmet actually.
With a mandible. Man, that's cool.
Yeah, for going down hills real fast in case you tumble straight over.
Awesome.
Or you get hit by a car. Knock on wood.
Are you into the downhill dirt bike stuff?
Well, I recently got a bicycle, and so I got this helmet because I thought, well, if you fall off, there's really nothing protecting your face.
Right.
There's like all the top of your head.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, oh, this is a mountain biking helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to bike on a mountain, and I was like, I'm not going to bike on a mountain. Nonetheless, this seems like a nice helmet. And it sort of made me feel like I was an anime character.
You look like one.
Because you can see it's bright red. You can see my mouth moving through the mandible at the bottom.
Yeah.
Like I'm a robot.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I've been doing. I've only ridden one time.
Where did you ride it?
Just around, hold on. See now? Yeah. I rode it around the city. Just sort of around the city.
Right. Did you wear the helmet?
Where did I wear the helmet?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
When you rode it around the city, did you wear the helmet?
Oh, yeah.
The Halo helmet? Sweet.
Why wouldn't I wear the helmet?
I don't know. I mean, it seemed like maybe overkill, but I guess you can't be too careful these days.
I think it's just enough kill.
Just the appropriate amount of kill.
That was my favorite line from those movies, Evil Dead, the Evil Dead movies.
Yeah.
You know, it was a corny. I don't know if guys have seen it, but Evil Dead was a corny B horror movie that embraced all its corniness.
Right.
And the hero lost his arm and he replaced it with a chainsaw. And then he used a shotgun in the other hand, which you call a boomstick. And he traveled back in time to medieval times to fight zombies with his chainsaw and his boomstick. And one guy goes, he goes through a room and he chainsaws the heads off like 40 zombies and then shoots their heads when they're in the air. And some guy goes, isn't that overkill? And he just looks at the screen and goes, I think it's just enough kill. So anytime someone says it's overkill, that's what I've said ever since.
That's good.
Are you a cycler?
No. Well, my neighborhood has a bicycle gang, mostly composed of children, and I run security.
Gotta get a bicycle.
Yeah. Well, I've got one. I got one.
How you gonna keep up with them if you're not cycling?
No, I've got a mountain bike.
Okay. You do sit on the cycle and patrol.
Yeah. I patrol. There's not really where I live. You're taking your life in your hands riding a bicycle on the roads where I live. Narrow.
Well, that's sort of always true.
Well, I mean, some roads are better than others.
That's true. But, I
have beef with road cycling.
A lot of people don't like cyclists on the road, which I understand because they go slow. But at the same time, most of the people that really hate cyclists should be cycling themselves.
True. So
that they're not as fat. You know who loves cycling is Scandinavians. Yeah. The Norwegians, the Swedes, if one of them is ever visiting America and you ask, oh, how are you enjoying your stay? They always go, it's always the same. They go, oh, we loved it. Today, wherever they are, we took X public transit
Mm-hmm.
X many hours away from the city, and did some form of outdoor athletics, kayaking, hiking.
Yeah.
It's always the same answer, no matter what you do. Wherever you are, whatever city you say, are you enjoying your time in America? And they go, yes. We got on a train or a bus or whatever. We went X many hours out of the city, and then we kayaked down a waterfall,
Mm-hmm.
and we loved it.
That's how
And
they live, man.
Yeah, that's all they do all the time. That's all the Scandinavians are doing all the time, which is why they don't really see. A lot of people feel like the Scandinavians are the most susceptible to cultural Marxism and like mass immigration and all this stuff. But it's really that they don't even know it's happening because they're just all skiing all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the problem. They're just all like, oh, woo, we go ski today. I ski to work. Zeus, Zeus, Zeus. And that's all they do.
Well, it's really, if you don't notice it, is it really happening to you?
Right. And the answer is no, because all the Scandinavians are just, they're all like up there like, we are all beautiful and we have free healthcare and everything is good. Whee! And they go down the hill and they go up the hill and they always just want to go down hills.
Yeah.
Whether on little poles on their feet or on tires or on whatever, or on kayaks, they just love to go down hills and say, Vee! And then go up the hill again. And they live great lives.
Well, those countries are just like Saudi Arabia for white people.
Oh, it's such a good comparison.
It's like the whole place just runs on oil money.
Yeah.
And they're not subject to normal market forces that the rest of us have to deal with.
Right. And they just, the Scandinavians are all very sweet people.
Mm-hmm.
They're all very nice.
I do love them.
As is true, really, of the Saudis. Except for when they get a little edgy.
I haven't met a lot of Saudis, so I can't comment.
Well, when they fly their planes into buildings, it's a little bit much.
Yeah, that's off-putting.
But most of them aren't doing that. It's 98% peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
They're mostly peaceful. That's the line you say these days.
Right, yeah.
Because everything is mostly peaceful.
Right.
I mean, the Holocaust was mostly peaceful.
I mean, looking back on my life, I'm 99.9999% peaceful.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You can use words to say it because, like, during the Holocaust, people were only killed for a little fraction of the total time they were there.
Yeah.
So really.
Yeah, I mean, very little time spent dying by any one person.
That's how you can say that about. But no, the Saudis, the Saudis are actually okay. They're not that bad. I have a friend. He went to Saudi Arabia not long ago,
mm-hmm.
and he actually got a letter from the Sultan. It's pretty nice, an invitation, which was the fanciest envelope I have ever seen.
Wow.
It was this rich purple, like sort of silky envelope, and it had been stamped with all these stamps from around its travel on the way to his house. And it had like this wax seal and stuff. It was basically like getting it from a medieval king.
Yeah, sure.
And he was an expert in something, and so he got invited over there to give a talk at the Saudi king's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he went over there and he was like, it was quite nice, and it is. It's basically like, one, the secret is, he said, about the hijabs and stuff, because this was back during the height of like Islamic terror panic in the U.S.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, the Muslims do this and the Muslims do that. And other people were like, no, the Muslims don't do this and the Muslims do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, well, here's the secret is the Muslims do X, but it's all because of the women.
What?
Like you think the women are like oppressed, but he said the women are the one over there enforcing the hijab laws on other women.
Right, yeah.
Because if one of the women is sort of pretty and they like take off and they're just wearing the thing around their head without covering their face, then the older women that are sort of spinstery are like, me.
Mm-hmm.
And none of the men care because, hey, there's a pretty girl walking around.
Yeah, can't complain.
So they don't, yeah. And so it's all really sort of a matriarchal tyranny,
Interesting.
which you don't really get the vibe from.
No.
But he got into a few hairy spots. He went and he was with this one way, she came to the talk because it was a talk on healthcare matters,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, now on women, it's you need to look for these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bit. He didn't really realize he was wading into dicey territory, talking about female anatomy in mixed company.
Ah.
Right. And then afterwards, there was one lady Saudi doctor there, and he just sort of reflectively went to shake her hand, and she was like, "We do not shake hands."
Oh.
much like a Scandinavian woman does. Back to your point.
Yeah,
They go, "We do not shake hands. We go down hills." Whee! They go down the hill. Like if you're ever trying to shake a Saudi woman's hand, she just goes "Vee" and rolls down a hill.
Right.
And she's gone.
It's quick means of escape.
Yeah, and then the other one is, he said, and then they took us out to the desert. And what they like to do in Saudi Arabia is they like to go out, like they don't have anything but the desert.
Mm-hmm.
So their version of going out to like a national park and whatever is they just get in a Jeep and drive it into the sand dunes. And then they stand on top of it and go, fresh air, the sand is blowing in your face.
Oh, man.
And they also love here and most Europeanish places.
Mm-hmm.
What rich people do with their money is they get horses and they ride around in a horse farm.
Yeah.
Over there, what they do is they do the same thing, but with camels. And so
Sweet.
you go out to the desert and there's this like stable of camels, and you go and you say, "I'd like to pick up my camel, please." And you get on your camel and you ride out into the desert and you go "Wee!" down the hill in Saudi
Mm-hmm.
with your camel. And he said he got out there and they were riding camels in the desert, and they had a big campfire. And afterwards they started talking about religion. And one of the Muslims goes, and he said, it's just like here, where there's a lot of Muslims that are just like, yeah, I'm a Muslim, but I don't care or know anything about Islam.
Right.
There's a lot of Christians like, yeah, I'm Christian. Like, I don't know anything about it really.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's largely the same. But there's like a couple that are really into it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's there and they're talking, and most of the Muslims there are like, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit crazy story. The Adam and Eve, I don't know. And then one of them's like, well, Adam and Eve were as big as the Kingdom Tower, which is the big tower there.
Interesting.
The big skyscraper.
Yeah.
And my friend was like, what? Like, oh yeah, they were like 400 foot tall. And he said, really? And he started getting a little,
Mm-hmm.
Incredulous at Islam. Which didn't go over super well, but they were also okay with it,
Right.
They weren't like going to cut off his head or anything. They were just like, of course they're 400 feet tall.
Well,
And he's like, what? I've never heard this before.
when you invite an American to your Middle Eastern theocracy, you should expect a little,
yeah,
Well,
they did. They were good. They were good natured,
Yeah.
But it was just they were surprised that he was surprised that Adam was 400 foot tall.
Mm.
They were like, "What do you mean you've never heard that? Of course, Adam was as tall as a skyscraper."
So is that normal Islamic doctrine that Adam and Eve are 400 feet tall? I mean, is that?
I think so. I think that they decided at some point that Adam and Eve were part of the Nephilim.
Okay.
Or something.
Doesn't make sense.
And not that the Nephilim were like 12 foot tall or 18 foot tall, but they were 400 feet tall.
I mean, that would be pretty rad.
It'd be pretty awesome. Hard to see how we got this small.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem with giant animals is that at some point it's hard to see how anatomy continues to function.
Right.
because your weight starts to like it's like building a skyscraper out of Lego blocks.
We're trying to build a space elevator.
At some point, your bones, the calcium bones, are not strong enough to support all this weight, no matter how big they are. You know, which is one of the problems with giant dinosaurs.
Yep.
That's why they had to scale them down a little bit, because they were like, I mean, once you start talking like a brontosaurus, which we learned was not real in another episode, that's like 30 feet tall or whatever, you start running into real issues of how that could function.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But if you ask a Scandinavian, they just say, well, I don't know. And they're away. They're also really good shooters. A lot of people don't know this.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Scandinavians are some of the world's greatest marksmen. And they don't have gun laws like we do. Like America has bad gun laws, really.
Agree.
Not but because it creates a gun culture of like tactical. Like, look at me, I got all this vaguely looking SWAT stuff. And then, and I got to put a skull on it. And Mulan Labe. And then you're like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And then they're not really good shooters.
True.
They've got all this stuff. And my beef with American gun laws is it encourages quantity over quality. Whereas, like in Scandinavia, they have limited gun laws, but they can still have them, and every one of them can like pick you off from 2 miles.
It's that triathlete culture or whatever it is.
They get on their skis and they're like, let's go weed down the mountain and also shoot the rifle.
Yeah.
And then it's great.
No, action pistol competition is huge over there, man.
Yeah, they're very, very good marksmen. It was that thing. I may have said this before, but there was when the Russians were rolling into Sweden, the famous general. They came in and said, "General, the Russians are coming. They outnumber us 2-1." And he famously just took another puff of his cigarette and went, "Then we will have to shoot twice." Yeah. It's just,
I love that.
I don't know why all my Scandinavians sound like Frenchmen. I can never do. Well, we will have to shoot twice.
It's a difficult accent. I can't do it either.
Well, what's great is all my accents increasingly just sound like some. They either turn into Irish or French.
You could do the chef. Do the chef, man. Yeah.
That's not really an accent, though.
No, but
that's just me being a Muppet.
Sure.
But that's great because people can't get mad at you for being racist. Like if you're doing a Saudi accent, you're like, and then you play it as, well, we will have to, and it's like, well, you're just doing a French Saudi,
right?
And so people don't get mad at you.
And there's no way to be racist against the French,
right? Because they're not A people.
No.
And B, they're not worthy of respect.
More like an attitude.
No, that's really not true. I like the French are great.
Yep.
They really like to riot.
They do. It's true.
They do it better than we do. I've been to France a few times. Have you been to France?
Never.
It's the countryside is very nice, and then Paris is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Pretty terrible. That's the only time I ever saw 2 hobos get in a fight over alcohol. and it was not like, and it was in a typical French fashion. It was over a bottle of wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like beer or some track. They had a bottle of wine and they were like, "Vi," and then they get in a tussle. And then one of them threw the other one down, and then he just took a big swig of his thing and walked away.
I wonder what would happen if you tried to give a French bum some like malt liquor.
He would turn it down and look at you disgustedly for being uncultured.
I kind of want to have that experience.
Yeah. Now
Let's go to France.
Like if you go to the Louvre, that's one of the only good parts of Paris. Because it has nice painting. You can go see the Mona Lisa, which is very underwhelming.
That's what I've heard.
Because it's about the size of a postage stamp.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like painted on like an 8x11 piece of paper, basically, like a printer paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's not much bigger than that, and then it's on the wall. And first of all, it's just a mediocre painting, really. It's not even Da Vinci's best painting. I mean, I couldn't do it.
Sure.
But artists that are professional artists could easily do it, right? And especially for a Renaissance era painting, it's nowhere near the pinnacle.
I feel like the Dutch masters have him beat, hands down.
Everyone has it beat on the Mona Lisa. I don't know why it got famous.
Yeah.
But it is on a wall, and then there's like 500 people between you and it, and they're all taking pictures of it, as if there aren't 1,000 pictures of this painting already easily available.
Well, you got to get a selfie with it.
Well, you really can't, because they don't let you get too close. They've got all these French guards going, no, step back. This is the Mona Lisa. And so you can't get near it. But then you go around the corner, and there's all this mind-blowing paintings from the same period. It's way better. And then I think, honestly, the Vatican Museum has better art than the Louvre, but still. Like the Vatican Museum, you go through, and it's all these paintings in real life that you saw in textbooks in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice. But anyway, yeah, that's the French, which are sort of like budget Scandinavians, not as in shape. And today we're going to talk about violence.
Sweet.
Have you ever? Well, I started thinking about this because there was all these. I got a what do you call it when you get when a veteran who has PTSD experiences something that gives him PTSD symptoms like fireworks or something.
I've always heard it called a flashback.
Yeah, I got a flashback.
Oh, sweet. Okay, let's hear about it.
Because I'm a veteran of things, not of war.
Of the meme wars.
Well, yeah, I'm just a veteran of various things.
Yeah, sure.
Not the military.
Mm-hmm.
But my service is nonetheless as important.
Sure. We'll go with that.
But I love it when people are like, thank you for your service to military people. It's like, yeah, I mean, I thank you for some of your service. Mm-hmm. Like, if you were in combat, like, okay. But the number of military people that actually see combat is like such a small fraction.
It is, yeah.
Most of them, because I will go work on military bases sometimes,
mm-hmm.
and most of them are just very normal, non-heroic people
mm-hmm.
that have their whole time. They may have got deployed for 3 months once
mm-hmm.
to a place that was the same as their place stateside, just overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is they go and they do office work somewhere else. You know,
mm-hmm.
if you want to shut down the military, you want to defeat the Marines, right? You get a virus that disables PowerPoint. And that's how you stop the U.S. military. Because if you go onto a base, they want to show you 70 PowerPoints for anything. And then they're like, oh, well, we're going to have a meeting about that. Get out the PowerPoints. And most of the military is just showing each other PowerPoints. It really is. It's crazy. And I know that military runs on logistics, but it's amazing how much they use Microsoft PowerPoint. And they couldn't operate without it. So Russia, if you're listening, when you want to take out the military, just develop a virus that disables PowerPoint, and they will be useless. I mean, they probably do the same thing, so it's not.
I spent some time at Fort Bragg last year, and I did notice that the place is covered with very complicated instruction diagrams and signage.
Like flow charts.
Yeah, flow charts, man, everywhere.
And decision trees. And it's like if this happens, then you flow over here, and then you run into this decision tree, and it's like And
It's
all
true,
it
it's true.
is people have made these complicated because the military is one of the greatest bureaucracies,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody wants to get in trouble. So if you just make a flow chart about what you should do, and then you just follow it exactly, then whatever someone says, like, well, why did you make that mistake? It seemed rather stupid. You say, well, I was just following the flow chart that we all agreed on.
Right.
And then they say, oh, okay, well, I guess you're clear.
Yep.
And then you go through the base. This is why people think like there's all these cover-ups, and sometimes there is, when there's never any accountability for anything that happens in government.
Right. The flowchart it's the self-automated cover-up.
Yeah, it's the self-automated cover-up because all they do is they agree beforehand in these complicated meetings of various flowcharts and decision trees of what to do if any given thing happens. And I mean like anything. They'll be like, what if we have an active shooter? Well, here's the flowchart. What if one of us has measles? Flowchart. What if we run out of tofu in the cafeteria? Flowchart. And they got a flowchart for all of it. And then no matter what happens, you just follow it, and they go down the line of command looking for anyone that didn't do their flowchart. And as long as nobody did it, then there's no fault.
Right.
As long as nobody deviated from their script, then it's like, well, I mean, we all did it exactly right. There's what could you do?
Yeah.
I know the active shooter killed 70 people while we were all playing golf, but
it was in the flowchart.
That was the flowchart. You know, my flowchart said if there's an active shooter, I'm supposed to go to my bunker and write a PowerPoint about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. So I'm clear. And that's really how automated cover-ups work. A lot of cover-ups are automated by this process.
Yep.
And it works that way. I'm sure it works that way in the FBI and the CIA too.
Well, by the time you untangle all the flowcharts and all the stuff that was done, all the records have been automatically incinerated on a predetermined schedule according to the flowchart.
Right, 100%. Yeah. And then that's like people are like, why isn't there ever any accountability? And people don't realize that a lot of conspiracy is not like this mastermind thing, but so banal. I don't want to get in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to offload any responsibility that may have been to me to people under me. Then eventually they're all just like, oh, the janitor didn't sweep properly. And that's why 9/11 happened. And it really is that dumb. You know, like the CIA and the FBI both admit, like, oh, yeah, we both had information that this was going to happen, 9/11. But we never shared it with the other guy, the other people. Like, why not? Well, I was going through the flowchart, and it said, don't talk to the FBI about this because it was classified X. And if it's classified X, I can't send it outside the department. And then I looked, and it was classified not only X, but classified H, and that means I can't send it outside my local department in the department. And then it's just like, well, and then everyone goes through and they have an internal review, and they're like, well, everyone did their flow chart.
Yep.
And then and then everyone's like, I guess we just go home.
Well, and Building 7 would have been fine, except for the guy that shreds all the paper, the leftover trash paper, was in diversity and inclusion training that week. So all the paper piled up. Yes. And there was just so much paper that it caught fire. The whole place imploded on itself.
Yeah, there are like these big like malicious conspiracies, but there's also a lot of it is just like, well, you know, it's been exactly 30 hours since this document was released. That means I must shred it no matter what it was. Yeah. That's how the moon landing tapes, that's the one thing. It's like, that's how I could imagine they got erased.
Right.
It's like, well, it's just, you know, it's been 2 years and it says get rid of tapes. And they're like, but this is the one of them standing on the moon. It's like, I'm doing the flow chart. If I do the flow chart, I can't get in trouble.
That's right.
And then they just incinerate the Apollo program. And like, there you go.
Well, when you're looking at a government retirement program that is some large portion of your salary for the rest of your life after you...
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to follow the flow chart. It doesn't matter if it's the moon landing.
If I follow the flow chart, I can retire at 50 and get paid half salary for the rest of my life for nothing.
Yep.
I'm doing the flow chart. And if it makes no sense, I don't care. I'm just doing the flow chart, and that's all they do.
That's why people live in New York today, is because they know they work for the government, and they know when they retire, they can move down south and live like a king on their half New York salary.
Right.
Retirement program.
It's I mean, I'm not knocking them. This is people don't understand how nonsensical our system is.
Right. 90% of the behavior that infuriates those of us who don't live in that world can be explained by like rigorous policies that must be followed or your retirement is in jeopardy.
Right. Like I did, like I was on one time, and when I go on them, I have various cases of equipment sometimes, right? Not all the time, but sometimes. And there was another guy, and I like put one down because they were hurrying me around places, and I put one down for a second, and I get in there, and I forgot about it. And they come to me like 40 minutes later, and they're like, "Is this your case?" And they show me a picture of it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's my case in there. We're gonna get a robot to explode it because it might be a bomb." And I was like, it's not a bomb. I brought it in here. I promise. I'll go open it myself.
Yeah.
To show you that it's not a bomb, because then it will just explode. Like, but you could be a suicide bomber on the flow chart. And I said, but if I was a suicide bomber, wouldn't I have kept the bomb on me? Right? Instead of leaving it there for you to then tempt me to go back to it and pick, like, it doesn't. And I eventually convinced him, like, oh yeah. And then one time I put in after Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning.
Yeah.
Apparently she stole all of the stuff on a thumb drive.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's like, oh yeah. And so then I was trying to get some data off a computer when I was there because I needed it to do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd done it the year before by just putting a thumb drive in. But this year I put in a thumb drive, and then 5 minutes later, these 4 armed guards show up. And they're like, "Did you put in a thumb drive?" And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "You can't put in a thumb drive. You may be stealing all the documents." And I was like, "Okay, well, how do I get my data off?" And they're like, "You gotta burn it on CD." And I said, "How is that any different? It doesn't. What do you mean?" I was like, "It's just a different. It's the same process. It's just slower." And they're like, "Yeah, but then you don't have. Then it takes you longer to get all the data. So if you're gonna steal a lot of it, it would take you longer, and we catch you." And I said, "Would you though?" If I was really committed. Anyway, so then I had to burn it all on CD.
Yeah, if you were there ripping CDs, no one would have showed up.
Exactly. And so then it was like, "You can't put in a thumb drive." Like, "I'm sorry, I missed that." And they're like, "Didn't you watch the PowerPoint?" And I fell asleep during that part about your new no jump drive thing. And that's what the military's like, and the government.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I was talking about that. Oh, I had flashbacks. See, this is why. Yeah, I when people are like, I'm like, you should thank me for my service. You know what I've dealt with America. Thank me for my service. So anyway. I have flashbacks because there was during these riots, the riots are still sort of going on.
Yeah.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. And people get upset when gangs of people jump on one guy, or especially when they sneak up on him and hit him in the back when they're not looking.
Yeah. And
people go, "Whatever happened to dignity and honor amongst fighters? Just if you square up to them and do." And I recall this also happening during the Islamic problems B of Europe, because there was the A period, and then it chilled out for a while. Then there was the B period, and now it's chilled out for a while, where these Islamic youths in high school would be on video, and they'd go up behind some German kid or whatever, and they'd beat him up when he wasn't looking, right? And people would say the same thing, like, "Burp-a-derp-a-derp. Herp-a-derp-a-derp. I'm upset," And I remember having this discussion during the Islamic Wave B. where it was like, it isn't even really cowardly. People are like, this is a cowardly behavior. Remember that. It's like, not really, if you think about it, depending on how, because the reason there's a code of honor only exists. We got to clarify things. We got to clarify violence here. That's what we're going to do today.
Cool.
A code of honor only exists among people that are of the same in-group.
Correct.
Because you don't, like, if you have a beef with someone and they're in your tribe, quote unquote, just to use that term. Well, you want to resolve the conflict, but you also don't want the other guy to die because he'll be useful to you in the future. Right? Like, we're on the same tribe. We've got a problem, but we need to resolve it because you're a pretty good hunter or whatever, and I could use your help later. You're a pretty good soldier. You know how to blacksmithery or whatever it is, right? This is how this sort of code of honor evolved.
Right.
Like, we need to solve this conflict. I'm mad, you're mad, but also for the health of the tribe and both of our mutual benefits, we don't need to kill each other because we're both useful to each other.
Right.
In the future. And other people are like, we don't want you to kill him because he knows how to find the berries. And we don't want you to kill him because he's really good at making arrow fletchings.
Mm-hmm.
So code of honor developed as a way to resolve differences between inside the group. And so you would fight, but you'd have rules on your fight. Like, you don't sneak up on each other. You maybe have a referee. Maybe you don't use weapons, or maybe you do use weapons, but they're blunted or they're limited.
So dueling would be sort of a outgrowth of this idea.
Yeah, exactly. So dueling, and there was periods in time where it was very violent. Mm-hmm. But what you would do is you would have people that come in and say, they try to talk you out of it. You give both people a lot of time to cool off. A lot of times duels would just fizzle out because, like, okay, we'll do the duel in 3 days. And in 3 days, you're not angry anymore. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, whatever. And they'd have all these rules to try and calm it down. And then, like, you fight with your weapons or your swords. And then if you maim the guy or you cut him real bad, then they say, stop. And then he'd have a chance of getting back up and being healed later, healed from his wounds. And he could still be useful. But they never did this. Like, the English never did this when they were fighting the French.
Right.
They'd sneak up on the French in the night and shoot them with the bow and arrow. If they got the chance. I mean, there was an extent when they were all in the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. There was a little bit, not very much, of like, well, we should not fire on fellow Christians in the same way. Right. There needs to be a little code of honor between us. That's why they had a rule for a while where, like, you can't use crossbows against fellow Christians because it's just too easy. Mm-hmm. Muslims, fire the crossbows. but against another Christian nation, no crossbows. And they would do that, right? The Chinese did similar when they were fighting. They would limit their weapons against people that were also Chinese or in the Chinese group, but against barbarians, it was no holds barred. And so you got to understand that you cannot expect, and it is incoherent to expect people not in your tribe to adhere to your honor code.
Correct.
It doesn't make any sense. And it would be foolish of you if you wanted to do violence on another group. And I'm not saying you should. Again, MAPS is not a terrorist organization. We're not endorsing violence. We're discussing the philosophy behind violence, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And how it works in the world. Just what it is. Mm-hmm. Not what it should be, but what it is. It would be foolish of you, if you were going to go do violence on some other group of people, to go up to them and declare your intent to have a fight.
Yeah, that would be very foolish.
Like, gangs don't do this with each other. Like, the Bloods don't tell the Crips, hey, tomorrow we're going to have a fair fight. Because if they did, the Crips would be like, fine. And the Bloods would show up like, where's everybody? And the Crips would be hiding on the street corners and the sides. And then they just waste them from the side when they weren't looking. Because why would you show up to a fair fight? Mm-hmm. because fighting is actually very chaotic, and the odds that you will, like, you can train all you want to, but there's still a high chance you're going to lose just from the nature of all the unknowns.
Yep.
You don't know how many people are going to show up on your side. You don't know how many people are going to show up on their side. You don't know what they will have. You don't know where their placement will be. You don't know this. You don't know that. It's very dangerous to engage in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules about making conflict safer only apply to people that don't fully want to annihilate each other.
Yeah.
And so if you're like, well, and so like, there are these rampaging mobs, okay, but they self-declare, and it's not even a race thing. You know, people are like, oh, what about, it's not even, because there's a lot of these people are white.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of them are black. A lot of them are this or that, right? There's not a lot of Muslims. I mean, not Muslim, Mexicans doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just said it because they both had M's. But there's not a lot of Mexicans out there rioting at the moment. Good job, Mexicans. But anyway, the Antifa people have self-declared that they're not part of this group.
Yep.
Whatever this group is, like the suburban people or whatever, or the Heartland America, they're like, we're not part of you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like you. Therefore, it is silly for you to expect them to adhere to some code of honor against you. Right? And it's also silly if you're going to go fight them and don't, unless it becomes necessary again, not from, but if you were like these people in Oregon who got out and they fight, they always get there's always like a little shock when people sneak up behind them and hit them with a brick.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's how it goes.
That's how they fight.
That's how intergroup conflict goes.
Yep.
Right. In-group conflict is different than intergroup conflict.
And let's take a little moment to appreciate the level of social trust and how long it takes up to build intra-group trust and rules of honor and honor codes and all that stuff. I mean, that stuff doesn't just materialize out of nowhere. That comes out of like a great need that a society sees because they share like an ethical system, and their leadership has some foresight and some authority to say, we really need to do better with this. So we're going to start establishing these codes of conduct in how we handle conflict within our group. And that stuff is hard won. And you can't just expect Yahoo from some other group to even be aware of what your codes are, much less obey them. Right.
And if you do, you're going to get hit in the back of the head with a brick.
Right.
And be surprised, and then go on Facebook and be like, well, we're not these cowards fighting with the. They should tell us when they're about to hit us with bricks.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how it works. We don't tell the Taliban we're about to drone strike them.
Right.
Right. No one, when you're engaged in outer group conflict, you never, and so a lot of this is just defining borders. This is all about defining borders on every level. All of our political, it's like, who is us and who is not us?
Right. Well, that's the crisis of American society right now. Is we're it's not that we're dividing ourselves up into little groups. Is that the majority is realizing that the groups have existed for a long time, and now that there's conflict, we're seeing the borders that we didn't know existed before.
Right. And this is that's how this is. This is a class on violence. We all have to figure this out. The other thing is one of my favorite essays ever written in the past 10 years is Violence is Golden by Jack Donovan. You've read that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So Violence is Golden is a lot of the upset about so-called police brutality. And I say so-called because some of it actually is and some of it isn't. And also because by its nature, police have to be somewhat brutal, right? Some of it is and some of it isn't justified, but whatever. You have to, it must be, like, people are sort of shocked. It's like people woke up one day and realized that police use force.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and it shows how little, how safe they have been made.
Right.
That they did not realize that this was a thing.
Eloy's, man.
It's Eloy's. Yes, it's Eloy's. And it's like, well, they want people, and this idea of like community policing, and like we'll have like social workers do it.
Yeah.
It just shows you how out to lunch people are about how the world works. Because there's no such thing as a pacifist. I mean, there sort of are, but this is why I do not like them, because they're all dishonest. Because all the pacifists nonetheless want all these laws.
Right.
And they say, well, how are you going to enforce your laws? And they're like, well, we're just going to pass them in Congress. It's like, yeah. But then what if someone breaks them? And like, well, then the police will. It's like, so then you're doing violence. And you're like, no, I'm not. It's like, yes, what the police are is a organized gang that people pay money to for protection, to do violence on their behalf.
Because somebody has to do the violence.
Right.
Somebody has to do it.
Violence is the currency of the human species. And that's unfortunate, but it just is what it is.
Yep.
Right? And so, like, if a soccer mom, Jack Donovan makes this point, if a soccer mom gets mad and goes to a meeting and demands stricter penalties for drunk driving, she is no longer asking nicely.
Yeah.
She is using her influence, power, and money to try and make a gang of men be more violent to people that do things she doesn't want them to do.
Exactly. And that's good, because I don't want my wife and daughter to have to do violence themselves because the police I paid to do that violence aren't doing it or don't exist or whatever. Like, that's the reason I want the police around, so that my family doesn't have to do a lot of violence. Maybe I'll have to do a little bit one day, but by and large, pretty peaceful life, especially for my wife and daughter.
Right. And so the people have just not been honest about this is an American problem. Americans have sort of blinded themselves to what they are.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of this is like, well, like you hear this even on people like Tucker Carlson. They talk about our country and what about our country? Like Tucker, we are not a country. We're a global empire. Like the United States has the prosperity it does primarily because it's been one of the most violent regimes in the past 500 years.
We have done a lot of war.
A lot of war. Like the prosperity, and I'm not against America. This is the American Patriot Society show. Nonetheless, you have to be honest. Like the reason America controls about half the globe.
Yeah.
What NATO is NATO is America and its vassal states. That's what it is. That's why we have bases all around. No one else gets to have bases on every other little country. This is why Germany did a Black Lives Matter protest with all their signs in English.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they have almost no black people that live there. This is why Sweden did the same.
Yeah.
This is why when we had the women with the pink hats parade, they had the same thing in France and Australia, because they have to do whatever the empire does. It's a culture. They have to have the same culture as their rulers.
Yeah.
They can't not do it. Someone there is like, even if they don't want to, someone from America calls up Australia and is like, hey, look, you need to all put on pink hats. Just get them out there. I don't care. Show solidarity with the emperor. Kiss the ring.
That's it.
Like, okay, fine. Right? You don't. And a lot of what we do is jockeying for position with the other powers that are not under our control. That's what all the Middle East has been about, largely. It's like, well, we don't want to step up and go toe to toe with Russia or China directly. So we will both, and they do it too. We will pay these various proxy people, these Taliban or whatever. We'll set them up to bite at the heels of our enemies.
Yeah.
And occasionally we have to go in and we do a lot of war, right? Democracy is spread at the point of a gun. The American foreign policy for the past 100 years-ish has been, you better be democratic or we will shoot you. Like, because we're spreading our ideology around the globe.
Right. And democratic is code for American vassal state. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Because if you vote for someone we do not like,
yeah,
you will have a regime change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you do it in America and you make it be Trump.
Uh-huh.
If the reason Trump is a threat, like when people say, "Oh, it's a threat to our democracy," what that means, democracy is code for the neoliberal world order, which has been established. It's the empire. And populism, this is why they also didn't like Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even though Bernie was wildly popular and would probably have won twice, they nixed him because he was also somewhat of a populist and an isolationist.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work when you're an empire.
Yep.
And if Trump, the only time Trump was praised by the media is when he bombed Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Only time. That tells you that what's going on. If Trump was like, look, let's shut off the border of Mexico, but also we're going to go and take over North Africa or whatever they wanted. If he just started some more, he would be much more liked by the media.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. His biggest failing is that, as far as they're concerned, he is a very strong, his isolationism and like, let's not start new wars. Mm-hmm. Or even, I don't even know how committed he is to that himself, but his vote that is the biggest threat. Everything else doesn't matter. Like, but you got to keep the empire in line, and you do that with guns.
Yep.
And you make people, and that's what America is. And that's what our police are. The police are, okay, like this is where black people are right in all this stuff, is that, well, look, most of the police are paid to basically enforce things and to be violent about things white people don't like. And it's like, yes.
Right.
That is true.
Because we're living in a democracy.
Right. Because white people are the majority in most places of America.
True.
This is how they get in their mind that there's white supremacy. And in a way, they are correct.
Yes, in a democracy. Yeah.
In the way that it's like, well, the cultural norms the things that white people think should be illegal are made illegal most of the time. And that means that when we do the things that white people think should be illegal, they send armed goons after us to get us, which is exactly what happens. And everyone that denies that that's what happens isn't being honest or is being naive, like a naive child. Mm-hmm. Like all the laws that you pass require someone with a gun to force it.
And those laws are required because we have to live in an ordered society or it's going to be, a dump.
Right.
We don't want to live in a dump.
Right. So, we don't want to live in a dump. Yeah. But at the same time, because Americans do not accept how violent they are.
Yeah.
It makes us actually be a lot worse. Like, for example, let's say that a guy gets caught with, I don't know how much is penalty these days. Let's say 10 ounces of marijuana. Mm-hmm. Okay. Put him in prison for 5 years or more, where he has to join a gang to stay alive.
Yeah.
He has to get tatted up. Mm-hmm. He loses some of his prime youth when he should be making relationships with women to start a family or getting an education and making business connections to have a career, set his life up. He loses 5 years of that life, is put around the worst people to possibly influence him possible. Mm-hmm. And has everything for 5 years. Okay. Is that more violent than just tying someone to a pole and giving them 30 lashes?
I would say the world would be a lot better off with the 30 lashes.
Right.
Everybody
would be. Because everyone is so scared to actually do the violence themselves. Yeah. Like when you have these intractable problems, it's usually because you're unwilling to be as violent as you should be. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, if you just like people like with the idea of like corporal punishment meted out by the state. People are like, what? I mean, they get so cringy about it.
Right.
Then it's like, no, look, you taking that guy for having 10 ounces of marijuana and putting him in a cage for 5 to 10 years over it, taking away that portion of his life, putting him in with the worst possible people, making him join a gang, doing all this stuff, that's way more violent.
Yep.
Than something that could be finished in an afternoon. Like, okay, well, you caught the thing. We have a quick trial. None of this like months and months and months stuff. Like, did he have it or no? What is the evidence? Takes a week. Because also people, especially lower IQ people that tend to do these sorts of crimes, like dogs, like when you're training a dog, you need the punishment to be close to the time that they did the thing. You can't punish a dog for chewing up the carpet a week later. They don't understand the connection. It has to be immediate. And so if you remove the punishment for selling the marijuana to like 2 years later, it doesn't register in the animal mind of man as strongly that this is what happened. Right. They begin to think, well, I just did it, but I didn't have the right lawyer. I'll do it again, but get a different lawyer.
It was this: the system failed. The system failed me, or the system is against me. He's like, no, you broke the law, and if you just got a spanking a couple days later, that would work in most cases. Yeah, and it would be a much more humane to everybody.
And it's not even their fault that they think the system failed them, because the system was the thing associated with the result.
Yeah.
Because the crime happened years ago, and then they went through the system for 2 years, and then the result happened. And so the animal mind, especially of low IQ people, attaches immediacy. Like the result happened. So if they were in the courtroom for a while and that's where the punishment happened, then it gets connected to the courtroom and not to their crime. And a lot of these people, you got to understand, like 10% of American adults, American men, can't even read.
Yeah.
Like they cannot read. They go into a gas station and you're like, why are they acting like that? It's because all the signs on the walls are hieroglyphs.
Is it really 10% of American males can't read?
Yeah, 10% of adult American males cannot read.
Oof.
And then you think, all right, so now readjust your expectations for society. Because when you get that in your mind, you're like, oh, right.
Yeah.
So those sorts of people don't. You gotta think about it a different way. And so if you were just like, okay, you had the marijuana, that's bad, we don't allow it. So now, look, publicly where everybody can see it, you're gonna get 20 lashes. But then it's gonna be over in 30 minutes. And your back will heal up after a couple of weeks, and you get on about your life. You can go back and have a relationship, and you probably won't do it again. Because that was very unpleasant. But it also is a lot less violent than what we currently do to people, which is ruin their lives.
Right, ruin their lives, exactly. Yeah.
And so but this comes from Americans being unwilling to face up to violence. Like, you're going to do the violence one way or the other, and if you don't face up to it, you're going to do worse. Because you're going to do it in this feminized, backstabbing way. Like, well, we need to be nice and have the prisons being really clean, and make sure they have health care, and we need to have everyone have a nice, have no prejudice in the trial. And he's still going to jail for 10 years.
Yeah.
Over this stupid marijuana thing, which doesn't need to. You can be nice, and you can make it be like, oh, it's all. You're still destroying the person. And if you were just like, that's it, okay, hit him with the whip or the cane pole or whatever. Like Americans used to do that.
Yeah.
Like George Washington himself meted out whippings on criminals. And that was a thing that happened for a long. And people are like, well, we don't want to do that because you're lazy. You want other people to do violence on your behalf, and you never want to have to do it. And you don't want, and you want to pretend it's not there, but it will always be there. And the more you don't look at it, the worse it is. It's like Americans think that we run this peaceful world, but we do so through tremendous violence. Like, we don't have the world's largest or most efficient military for no reason. It's not just there for funsies.
Yeah.
It's like it's there because we use it, and we enforce will around the world.
And this also explains a lot of the cultural divide between majority Americans and military and police people, because those people know about the violence and have to do it for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so separated from it that we don't even like to think about what they do. And it's awkward when we learn about what they had to do because of the laws that we voted for. Or yeah, you know.
It's like, well, you guys made us. It's in some sense the cops are like, you guys. Now there are videos where they're like, there was one recently where they put a bag over this guy's head and then slammed him on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a bit much. I get it.
Yeah.
Right. That does happen. Nonetheless, when you make a law and then someone's like, oh, I don't want to go, because every law, this is the thing that Jack talks about in his article. It's like, you always have to answer, or else what?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you got to do this. And then someone says, or else what? And the universal language that even goes across species is if you pick up a lead pipe and you gesture at them that you're going to hit them in the head with it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone understands, or else what? Dogs understand, or else what?
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of the mammal kind gets that message.
Yep.
And that is ultimately what happens. If you don't pay your taxes, the lead pipe is there, right?
But it's all secret, because we don't like to face it.
We all shunt it off behind. I mean, not everyone in the modern world does. Singapore today, right now, which is a very modern country, it's very nice. They have you get canings, and whippings for punishments, and it's really effective.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore has a very diverse community of Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, some really extreme Buddhists, by the way, who, and they all get along pretty well because it's like, if any of you step out of line, you're gonna get beaten by the state in a pretty intense way.
And publicly.
And publicly. And it works. And I know no one's people we don't want to do that. It's like, well, then you're just going to be worse.
Yeah. Instead, you put somebody in prison for the prime of their life and you ruin them.
Or you do what California did, which they to their credit acknowledged this problem and said, well, I guess we just won't be violent at all.
Right.
And we'll just let all the criminals out. And it's like, okay, well now though, the criminals are just doing violence instead. The violence never goes away.
Yeah.
Now it's just homeless people on the streets beating each other, threatening people on the subway, on the train, and lighting fires to set the state on fire, or also having deciding what their gender of their baby is and burning down North Carolina, whatever it is. You gotta. You can't get away from it. There will be violence. You will either participate or not. If you don't, you won't get a say in where the violence goes. And if you want to say in where the violence goes, then you also have to be violent.
Yep.
Right. And you can pay other people to do it, like the police or the military. That's what most people do. That's fine. We don't all need to be whipping people. Nonetheless, you must understand that your society has to run on that.
Mm-hmm.
And people are so unwilling to do that. This is why kids should do combat sports. Yeah. Boxing or something just be somewhat familiar with violence. Just be somewhat, I'm not saying you gotta go in the UFC.
Just get in a fight. One fight is immensely educational and does great things for your worldview and your understanding of what violence is really like.
Yeah, it's like the great Mike Tyson quote, everybody got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. Yeah. It's and that applies for because he was talking about his opponents who were having tactics of what to do against Mike Tyson. And it was some interview and the reporter was he thinks they got the secret formula to beat you. And Mike just goes, everybody got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Yep. And that's true about your politics. It's oh yeah, free markets. And it's okay if we foreclose on 30 million people's homes. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Yeah. Because we also screwed up the economy that led to it. But it's a free market. They signed the contract. Mm-hmm. I know they couldn't really read, most of them. And but it's okay. And then it's that's the plan. That's our ideology. And then those people come and burn down your house. Yeah. And it's well, your idea was great till you got punched in the mouth, wasn't it? Because at the base of all of it is violence.
Mm-hmm.
That is the gold standard of. That's why the article was called "Violence is Golden." And also, people that do violence are often some of the nicest. Like I have done. I don't oversell this because I'm not like Johnny Badass or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done MMA gyms and stuff been around.
Sure.
And in my travels, I have wrestled with or done jujitsu with or been boxed with people that have, and in some cases still do, fight in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell who they are. And but they have all, without exception, been some of the nicest, most respectful guys.
Yeah.
Because they understand what violence is. And they know that even if they can beat you up, no problem, in a one-on-one fight.
Mm-hmm.
And, to my credit, I did okay. Like, I got beaten, obviously, by pro fighters.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't beat me super quick, which I felt was good.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like if I was against a pro swimmer and I sort of held my own.
Right.
It's like, but they understand that even if they could beat you roundly, like, all it takes is if they are extremely disrespectful to the wrong guy, then when they're not looking, he'll hit them in the back of the head with a shovel.
Yep.
And then all your training was useless.
Yep.
And they understand this because they know their own vulnerability as people, because they've been hit in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And they know, like, oh, I got a problem here if violence gets out of hand, because it can kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all been some of the most like these giant guys. And they're like, really not like great fighters, super athletic. And they're like, oh, hey, they're always willing to help you. They're always willing, they're very respectful guy. Conor McGregor's an exception. He is, I think it's because he was probably on roids. John Jones is an exception for the same reason. John Jones, if you ever heard, there was that famous story with him where the inspectors come around. Because again, John Jones is afraid of the inspectors because they come with violence. Because they will, like, the inspector's a little nobody, but behind him is all these people like, well, now you can't fight. And if you want to, then we're going to get a group of men together and come after you.
Yep.
To stop you, right? And so he'd been doing every drug under the sun. And they came to his gym to find him, and he hid under the ring for like 10 hours while the guy sat there and waited for him. And he would like pee in bottles and stuff. Because they all, look, almost all pro athletes are cheating.
That's sad.
I just want you guys to know that. Because, and they sort of have to, because there's going to be 10% that are cheating and get away with it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then to keep up, it's like an arms race.
Yeah.
Like I told you about the one guy I knew that would fight, and he would, the night before, he would soak for like 7 hours in a bathtub of baby oil.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he'd start sweating it in the ring, and then they try to grab him, and he'd just like slip off.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a total shit, but they all do stuff like that. Like Chael Sonnen got up there and was like, talking smack about other people cheating, and then like 3 hours later, he pops for whatever on his blood test.
Mm-hmm.
They're all, and all NFL players are on steroids.
Yeah, sure.
Just know that, guys. People are like, they look so, they must have an intense training regime. Like they do, but also you aren't that big and also that lean without steroids. Doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And all the baseball players are on it. It's just I know it's upsetting, but everyone's on steroids in pro sports. Anyway, that's a diversion. But yeah, there's like, if this is why a lot of Antifa people get up, they react with shock when violence is visited upon them, because it never has. And they're like, whoa, this isn't a video game.
Yeah.
And now this is a problem.
My bicep just got blown off.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't take Antifa lightly, though, because Antifa is getting better at violence.
Yeah, they are. They're
like an anti-fragile enemy.
Did you watch the hit on that guy, the Trump guy that got capped? Did you watch the video on that?
Yeah, yeah. It was a good assassination. I mean, good as in like well executed.
Right.
Not good as immoral.
Right.
But when you fight people, the Antifa people that don't run away and that stick in the pocket and stay in there and do it are gonna get better at violence.
Mm-hmm.
They're just don't write them off just because right now they're a bunch of If they and they are showing signs of getting increasingly better. Just like the people, the Trump guys that came in from Oregon to fight them. The first time they went in there, and they were like being very dumb, and they had all their license plates exposed and all this. The next time they went through, they figured out we got to tape up all that. Don't let any identifying markers in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, both sides are getting better at both sides are sort of cringy and not super effective right now. But if they stick at this for 2 or 3 years, they will be very good.
Yeah.
So don't write off Antifa as nonsense, because if the ones that are too weak will get weeded out, but the ones that stay will become pretty good fighters.
Mm-hmm.
They'll become organized. They already have a command structure.
Yep.
They'll get better logistics. And insofar as that, respect to them for figuring it out. But because you always got to respect your enemy.
Indeed.
But anyway, that was a bit of a scree. But I get so upset with people for not understanding what violence is.
Yeah.
It's real. I had to explain to you my understanding.
Sure.
My understanding. Have you seen this understanding?
No. What is that?
You don't say understanding because then you're placing yourself. You're standing under whoever you're talking to.
Okay.
This is the new thing. It's not new. This is the thing I've been looking into. So there's some people who are heavily into the what do you call it? Not even conspiracy, but magical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Word magic. Who really go deep into this idea that your words have power.
Yep.
And then so what they do is they don't say certain things, and so they don't say. They're like, well, that's my understanding. By which, because they replaced it with understanding.
Right.
Because they don't want to. And I was thinking about that. This is why I wanted to. This is the other part of the show. So first I screamed about violence. And now I'm going to tell you how really Labor Day is a spell.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay. So because this word magic thing is real. Right? And again, Israel. I'm just saying. Word magic thing. Here's how it works. All right, I'm going to explain to you because it's hypnosis based, and hypnosis is real.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Jew kind, but is real. It is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, oh well, some people can't be hypnotized. That's not true. Every single person that doesn't have a severe mental retardation can be hypnotized.
Yeah. Every time you watch TV, you get hypnotized.
Exactly. Yeah. Some people cannot be hypnotized in the highly ritualistic way that's traditionally done by a therapist with a watch and a thing and a spinning thing. Right. But yeah, like you said, the TV is hypnosis just means you are put into a relaxed, semi-sedated state with all of your conscious attention focused on one thing, which is what the TV does every day, or the YouTube, or whatever. And in such a state, you become highly suggestible, which is why advertising works so well.
Yep.
Okay. In such a state, you become highly suggestible. Why? Here's the trick. Why do people get suggestible in hypnosis? Why can you? And there are some people that are very susceptible to the standard ritualized hypnosis, where you go into a therapy. Some people their guards get thrown up for that, And most people can be hypnotized in that way. But a lot of people know about that as hypnosis. And so they throw up a guard and they're like, no, I don't want to do this. And they can't, right? It's the same thing as I don't want to watch TV right now. You can't be hypnotized by the TV, even if it's on.
Right.
Same thing. So what it is when you get into that sort of dreamy, because when you think about it, you're sitting on your couch or you're lying in bed and you're watching your tablet, you're watching your YouTube or the TV or whatever, Your body is relaxing down. You're getting down into a deeper and deeper, sort of, and sometimes you even fall asleep while you're doing it. And what happens is when you're on this like edge of being in a sleep state, but you're still conscious awake, you're simulating the dream state where you're unconscious, but also you have this conscious awareness going on. And suggestions made in that state can be interpreted by the brain as its own subconscious speaking to it. And so it appears as though it's your idea.
Oh.
That's why advertising works, because it gets you to think on some level, your brain's like, oh yeah, that's my idea that's cool. Or that's my idea that's sexy. And that's why they get you in this state. You watch the show and then you say, and then they're like, and here's this beer and it's associated with sexiness. And then your mind is like, yeah, that beer is associated with sexiness. And I thought of that. Because you're almost in a dream state already. And then the dream is like your subconscious speaking to you. And so your mind interprets it like it's almost your idea. And that's what sells it to you. Right? This is how it works. Now, and this is why all of the Scandinavians are on skis. Because they had advertising some years ago that was like, and it is cool to go down the mountain, V, and they go, woo, and they all love it. Because they've all been hypnotized to do, and it's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily bad. You can have good hypnotizing. But so, and but the best magic, because you have to convince yourself that it was your idea, right? This is why the best magic spells always hide in plain sight. Because then you convince yourself it doesn't really mean what it means, and then it's allowed to affect you directly. Perfect example of this is the word enchantment. People think enchantment means like Disney and like Tolkien and elves and all this fantasy stuff.
Yep.
And they say it's not real. But all enchantment is to be under the influence of a chant. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Where we go one, we go all. Where we go one, we go all. That's what it's, and you say it over and over again, and it internalizes to the, and you can control mobs that way. You can control whole countries that way under the spell of an enchantment. You're under the spell of a chant. And the reason that enchantment works so well is because you don't believe that it is what it is. Because you say, oh, enchantment just means something that can't happen. It's like some fantastical thing. And it was like, yeah, that's exactly right. And then you get the chant on you, and then you're like, well, it can't be enchantment because that's not real. And then you sell yourself on the thing.
Right. Oh, well, the chance is just a way for us to pump up the crowd and keep everybody energized and get our message out there.
Right. And so because it hides in plain sight, it's like the enchantment. It's like Wayne L. Sexton. It hides in plain sight. And you have to say to yourself in your mind, this isn't what that is. And then that allows you to be fully taken in by it. That's how the hypnosis works, because it convinces you it's your idea. Like the hypnotist always sort of speaks in a way that leads you to make the conclusions.
I just listen to that music because I like the beat.
Right.
Not because it's talking about sodomy.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's how, so the reason hypnotic suggestion, this is a class on hypnotism. So the reason hypnotic suggestion can work is because sounds have multiple meanings, right? But your subconscious hears them all and only gives you one. So like, if you say labor, that could mean delivering a baby, sort of labor, or it could mean like I'm out working. Okay. And when you hear that, though you're not aware of it, your subconscious processes all meanings of labor and offers up the one that fits the best context to you. And says, well, in this context, we're talking about work. And so then you don't even think about the other context right now. And then you just go through and you talk about work. But underneath your conscious attention, both have been triggered. Both meanings, and for a brief minute, anything that follows can be suggestively attached to the other meaning.
Okay.
Right? So when you're like, So when, let's say that you're like watching a commercial for Viagra or just ED, right? Erectile dysfunction, which again was just made by marketing companies. It really was. So it's like, first, like, it's like programming. The TV has programming.
Yeah.
And you say to yourself, this isn't what that means. It's not hypnotically programming me. It's just it's like, no, why wouldn't they just call it a schedule? Right. And then I know that gets a little conspiratorial, but you got to understand, advertisers like hypnosis. They've studied it for years and they use it on purpose.
Yep.
And that's not a secret. Right. That's the reason they pay so much for product placement, because that's better than an advertisement, because the advertisement sort of breaks the spell for a minute. It breaks your conscious attention, takes you out of the show. If you're just in the show and everyone's drinking a Coke and it's sexy people drinking a Coke, then you attach that in your mind to like, oh yeah, sexy people drink Coke. I want to be sexy.
Right.
And the product placement has been proven to be much more effective. Right. Then like the advertisement still works, but you've sort of got you out of the hypnosis by breaking the rhythm of the story. And so, and you think about it, movies and sometimes the nightly news comes on and it comes on with a countdown. Like an actual countdown of numbers. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
That's not an accident. It's like 10, 9. It's like, that's the same thing the hypnotist does. We're going to go to sleep in 10, 9, 8, 7. And then you become very suggestible. And this works because you're convincing yourself that it's not what it is. And that's how spells work. It's like when you, so
I have an aside question here.
Yeah, go.
Is this why the New Year's Eve ball drop is so powerful? Is because the process of counting it down hypnotizes the audience?
Yes, because the countdown, here's how the countdown gets you in hypnosis. Because as you're counting down, you realize there's an end point. And the promise is at the end point is going to be a thing you don't want to miss. So pay attention. Right. And so then you begin counting down. 3, 2, and the person is very focused because what's going to happen at 0? What's going to happen?
And the ball is like the watch. You're watching the pocket watch. And then at the moment when all this countdown ends and there's this big thing, then it's like, oh, here's 2 dudes in New York like kissing each other in the street. And we're back after brief technical difficulties.
So yeah, like a lot of this is like instinctual hypnosis. Like people do this to each other. Like there's definitely hypnosis used in advertising. I don't know to what degree hypnosis is used at the ball drop in New York Square. I know that it mimics, purposefully, I mean.
Sure.
I know that it mimics hypnosis in a strong way, but nonetheless. So this is like, imagine you're watching a commercial and it comes on for erectile dysfunction, and there's a line that says, there's like a soft voice. It's always very soft, and just like you're on the hypnotist couch. It's like, as we get older, sex changes. But that doesn't have to be bad. And then it goes on with the rest of the thing. But then you think about it, and the way to break hypnosis spells is you just listen to what it is without interpretation. So again, listen to it. As you get older, sex changes. Doesn't have to be bad.
Oh, there's some layers there.
Right? You see what I mean? Like, doesn't have to be. And so the brain is interpreting things, and all these meanings come in, and then it filters out the one that makes the most sense. But all of them register. Couple that with a thing about you are impotent, and then it becomes a spell to like help people transition into being a girl.
Oh, that's awful. So I thought you were going with the advertisements for ED treatments are actually creating ED, but you're saying they're actually creating sex change desires.
Well, like you just gotta listen to the words and listen to the words people say on TV and in media without interpreting them.
Okay.
And just and you will begin to see this. This is why Labor Day is a spell by the Masons.
Okay.
Because you think, oh, it's just a day off work, a day off labor. But labor is also pregnancy, which lasts 40 weeks. And Labor Day suspiciously comes at roughly 40 weeks into every year. Right. So, and you say, well, why would they do that's weird? Why would they? It's like, I know. And you can't wear white after Labor Day because you're no longer like the virgin bride wears white. Right. You see, and so and I get that people are like, this is a bit like, who would do this? You got people that do global control schemes do weird stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's the same with, like, I was talking about the stuff with, on the show with Matthew Kressel. I was talking about, like the law of the land and the law of the sea, you know, and I didn't go into that, but you think about it, it's all of the pirate law, the law of the sea that creeps. It has to tell you what it is, because that's how the hypnosis works. Like, you think about in finance, all of it's related to water. Like, you got to stay solvent. You don't want to go under. You got to, you know, your assets need to remain liquid, not frozen.
Right.
Keep your money in the bank, like the bank of the shore. Currency. Currency. Like, you just listen to the sound, right? Because as your mind is processing information, the syllables current comes through, and before the C is added, it's like currency. Oh, the money. But beforehand, it could have been the water. And so you're going through there, and this is how and so you got to listen to the words. And so I don't know if the guys that are saying understanding are engaging in a bit of pareidolia there and seeing images where there aren't any. But maybe they are. But maybe they're right. Maybe we should say understanding. I don't know. But this is all you got to get woke to this, to the fact that hypnosis is real, word magic is real, and that it does control you, because it allows, it's a way of tapping into the subconscious and making you sort of think you came up with the idea on your own.
Yeah.
And that's how so many people can get led down these ridiculous rabbit holes, because they think, oh, I came up with that idea. And isn't it amazing how so many people connected to the mass media all have exactly the same opinions that they all came to very logically?
Isn't it?
Isn't that amazing? Like, so many people have the same, and it's on, you know, this is why Q is so hated, because the Q conspiracy, although it is ridiculous, it is nonetheless a very effective hypnosis spell. Because built into it is the idea that whatever happens, you reinterpret as this.
Yeah.
No matter what, it's proof of this. This is why Q is very threatening to the elites with their hypnosis schemes. Yeah. Because it is a very powerful hypnosis spell in the other direction. Neither hypnosis spell relates to the truth. But that doesn't matter. Because if you've ever watched someone get hypnotized, it's amazing what you can do. You can make someone that hates tomatoes start eating tomato sandwiches and be like, it's pretty good. Because they will think in their mind they have convinced themselves that they like tomatoes now. You can break addictions to cigarettes. You can break and it doesn't work for everybody all the time, but it works enough of the time where it's like, this is powerful stuff. You know, I don't know have you ever been to a hypnosis show? Stage hypnotism is a little different, but
no, that stuff freaks me out.
It freaks you out, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're just playing along." Like, no, they're not playing along. Like, it works because the people that he always asks for volunteers. I need volunteers. So when you start, just the act of you getting up there, you have demonstrated that you want to be hypnotized,
right?
And so, like, a part of the people that go up there and do it, you know, and it may be a small subconscious part, but a part wants to get up there and be either the object of attention or to let loose. Because a lot of what stage hypnotists do is they will make people do semi-lewd or sexual things under hypnosis. And a lot of that, people know that, and a part of them want to get up there and be sort of voyeuristic. But then you also have a cover of like, oh, it wasn't really my fault. I was hypnotized.
Yeah.
But see, but that in itself allows the hypnosis to work because it's the same principle as alcohol in some way. Like a lot of what people do on alcohol, they do not because of the influence of alcohol, but because the alcohol allows them to claim that it wasn't really them doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing. Same thing. The hypnotism works along those lines also, where it's like, you sort of want to do this, and now we're going to give you an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's not really your fault because you were just following the flow chart. And that's what
the
that's
flow
why
chart
PowerPoint has so many bright colors. You know?
Yeah.
And people just gotta, this stuff is like real. It's not all the time. Like, is everything on TV hypnotism? No.
Right.
Are some things on TV hypnotism? Absolutely.
This is a threat to our democracy. Remember that?
Yeah. You repeat it over and over again, and you say it in the same way, and it's like it's enchantment. It's like, and again, like even spell the words. It's in the words. That's right where it is, and then the fact that you overlook it for a different definition of spell allows the spell to work because you sell yourself on it. So that's my understanding.
That's beautiful, man.
That's my understanding. And that's why Labor Day, and people are like, well, what would Labor Day be? What is that about? It's like, well, just think about it for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
That's your homework assignment, is to think about.
What is Labor Day about?
Because why does it's Labor Day. It comes the exact length of pregnancy into the year, 40 weeks. If a woman got pregnant on January 1st, she would give birth about Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you can't wear white afterwards. You're not supposed to wear white after Labor Day. And then there's all this symbolism, and all of these like markers throughout the year similarly have things about them, which I'm not sold on 100% that it's a spell, but I'm like, maybe it's a spell. Like recently, a great example of recent is the rule of 6 in Britain. You saw me talk about this.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
The rule of, like, Boris Johnson got out there. He's like, we're now instituting the rule of 6, which means that only 6 people in any social or private gathering can be together at once for coronavirus. And then you're like, again, listen to the, like, so you're only 6 people, you're 6 feet apart, and the rule of 6, and you're wearing a mask, and you're like, this isn't a satanic ritual. I know there's 3 6s and I'm wearing a weird mask, but this isn't Satanism.
I hate this so much.
And then, but see, that's the thing. The fact that it's considered not possible or considered weird, allows the spell to go on.
Yep.
And then you listen to the words, the rule of 6, the ruler, the authority of 6, of the beast, the rule of 6. It's like you're under the rule of 6. And then, and then people are like, oh, it's not, that can't be. I'm just going to go on the hill V. But no, it's the rule. And I mean, I get why people don't want this to be true because it's very upsetting.
Yeah, if you tell people that mask wearing is we're being compelled to participate in a giant pagan ritual as a society, they don't handle that well in most cases. I
mean, it wouldn't be, but you gotta ask things like, why 6? Why not rule of 5? Why not 7?
Yeah.
Why is 6 feet apart the magic number? And they say the 6 feet even in places that don't use feet. Like in Europe, they have the 6 foot rule, and they talk about meters. And they was like, how many meters is that? It's like, a little less than 2.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah, because they're like, because again, it's the same reason their signs are all in English when they're up there talking about abortion rights in Berlin. It's because they're part of the empire. But anyway, the spell has to work, across multiple disciplines, and so you got to watch out for like these, and it doesn't, like, there's, everything operates on 3 levels. The profane, which is what the masses experience, like, oh, it's just the rule of 6. The occult, which is the hidden meaning, which is like, it's actually the rule of 6, the beast. And there's the divine, which is where you see through it all, and you're like, oh, it just doesn't matter. It's just like, oh, that's all gay. And then you just go about your life because you're like, oh, right. This is people being weird in Bohemian Grove and wearing masks.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's cringe.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go, and then, like that's a lot of what Jesus did on earth, really, was he was going through and looking at the rituals and being like, cringe, and then not doing it. I mean, in a way. So just keep that all in mind. Know what violence is. Go down your hill as much as you want to and go V. It's fine. But just know.
That was cool. As sort of a coda on this episode, I was happy to hear we were talking about violence. I did an action pistol match for the first time yesterday, in probably a year. So like, rusty, getting back into it.
What is the rules of this match?
Well, it's interesting. So they set up a big obstacle course of barricades and targets and hostage targets that you're not supposed to shoot, and steel things and mechanisms that you activate by shooting this or that thing, and this target swings out and you have to hit it. And you have to run as fast as you can, and you have to jump off of things, and it's sort of like obstacle course plus sprinting plus shooting all at the same time.
How long does it take one to go through a course?
Oh, they're short, like 15 to 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So it's very short bursts of intense. So it's great for gun handling. Like I'm not skilled in fighting in any way. I'll about every couple of years I'll convince one of my friends to box me so that I can have a fresh fight experience, even if it's totally amateurish. Like just getting punched in the face does a lot for your attitude.
Right. Yeah.
But with this action pistol stuff, there's a lot to be gained in as far as marksmanship and weapon manipulation and shooting around barricades and reloading and all that great stuff, gunfighting stuff. But at the same time, it's sort of there's a problem too, because the whole thing is looking at this obstacle course, walking through it, making up this complicated gun kata in your head, and then executing it on the first try.
Right.
And in a real fight, you don't get to make up a kata.
No, you don't get to really make up a gun kata.
Yeah, you get to maybe use little parts of katas that you've made. Maybe. Which is part of which is good. I mean, that's part of the reason the katas exist. Yeah, I wonder if I'm weakening my abilities on one side, on the strategic end of things, but increasing them in the technique. The tactical side of it. Yeah.
Maybe like a lot of people, like a lot of guys that they fight the Antifa on the street.
Yeah.
They have better tactics, but worse strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Like technically their skills are a lot better, but they're not organized like Antifa is.
Right.
They don't know the lay of the land. They don't understand their enemy. So their strategy is off.
Right.
You got to have both. You got to have strategy and tactics.
I think that strategy is probably my weakness as well.
You gotta have strategy. So maybe we need a strategy meeting. We'll make some flow charts.
Yeah, I could use a good flow chart.
Yeah, we'll go to the Air Force and we'll plug in a flash drive, and then we'll just fight the guys that come. And that'll.
I hear they get pretty mad when you do that.
They get super mad.